Hey guys, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today's video is the first Warlock build of Season 21, and it's one I'm really excited to share with you guys because I literally haven't seen anyone else mention a build featuring both of these exotics, let alone Mantle of Battle Harmony, since its big rework. And I wanted to go over it and really why I'm going to be rocking this build over a lot of other Warlock builds for Grandmaster content. Some brief highlights of the build include the best possible healing in the entire game, along with Eyes of Tomorrow, which has infinite ammo with this build, and I'm not meaning that as in it gets a lot of ammo drops for it. It literally has infinite ammo built into it, and it also has a damage boost of up to 193%. On top of this, you have fantastic super regen and just great survivability, and it really makes one of the most prominent builds in the entire game, and honestly, anything below Legend content, this is overkill in my opinion. Before we get into it, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and let me know what kind of builds you're excited to see down in the comments below. I am featuring a Hunter build next, but after that I'm going to kind of just mix it up and go with whatever I think is going to be the most fun and creative. But let me know if you have any recommendations, or if there's something you specifically want to see. Getting into the subclass then, for your super, I'm recommending Well of Radiance. While you can truly use either with this build, the main function behind our whole damage bonus functions behind having our super as fast as we can and holding on to it. So Well of Radiance is not only a great survivability super, but it plays in well with the playstyle because of its lower cooldown. For your abilities, we're using Phoenix Dive, and the main reason we're using this is to get restoration times 2. You can go with a healing or empowering rift depending on what activity or playstyle you're going with. The main reason behind Phoenix Dive is to get restoration times 2 and also the curing effect for our allies. For our melee, we're going with Celestial Fire, just so we have a long range melee option for endgame content, just because as good as Incinerator Snap is, it does require you to be pretty close to enemies in order to use it effectively, and we're really not looking for ignitions at all that Incinerator Snaps typically help out with. We're mainly just looking to get a few damage hits off to proc Radiant. And then finally for your grenade, I'm personally going with Healing Grenade because of its compatibility with our Touch of Flame aspect. In truth, you can use any grenade that you want to. Onto our aspects then. The first is Touch of Flame, and like I mentioned earlier, the main reason we're rocking this is just to have the improved effect from our Healing Grenade. With our Healing Grenade and Touch of Flame aspect, it grants us Cure times 3 and Restoration when we consume it. And when we consume our grenade, it also grants us Heat Rises, which also has another effect tied in with Phoenix Dive. For Heat Rises, you consume your grenade and activate a 15-second buff that can buff up to 30 seconds. And Final Blows while you're airborne, refresh the timer and increase the duration up to 30 seconds for Heat Rises and grant you melee energy. Plus, while you have this on, you can also fire your weapons, use your melee charge, use your grenade charge, all while you're gliding. Now, tying this back into our class ability, when we use Phoenix Dive while Heat Rises is active, it goes from making this Phoenix Dive a basic curing class ability into one that actually grants you Restoration times 2. Now, the nice thing about this is once Restoration times 2 is active, you actually don't need to go back into the air at all. You can simply stay on the ground and then reactivate Restoration times 2, Radiant, and whatever other effects you want to take advantage of with this build. Onto the fragments then for the build. The first one is Ember of Torches. Just getting a powered melee attack against an enemy makes us Radiant, and again, we have ways to keep Radiant and Restoration up at all times with this build. For our next fragment, we have Ember of Tempering. Any solar weapon Final Blow grants you and your allies increased recovery for a short duration, and this can stack up to 3 times. And while Ember of Tempering is active, your weapons have an increased airborne effectiveness value, and your solar weapon Final Blows also create a fire sprite. Now, while this does take off 10 recovery, at times 3 stacks, it grants you plus 30 recovery total, getting you a net bonus 20 recovery stats. We'll be stacking this with a few other font mods to give us a huge stat bonus across the board with this build. Additionally, fire sprites also count as a small grenade bonus, allowing you to get your grenade back even faster. And if you do want to have a more airborne focused playstyle with this build, this does allow it because of the base airborne effectiveness boost it grants you. We also have Ember of Empyrean, which any solar weapon or ability Final Blow will extend the duration of Restoration and Radiant that we have applied to us, and this also works for Restoration times 2, meaning that once we get this proc through Phoenix Dive, as long as we get solar Final Blows, again from our abilities, from our super, or from our weapons, it will increase the duration of Restoration and Radiant. And then finally, we have Ember of Solace. Then this just allows for Radiant and Restoration to have a base increase to its standard duration. The main reason behind this is whenever we use Phoenix Dive, you really only have Restoration times 2 for a few seconds. This will more or less double that initial duration and allow us to hold on to Restoration times 2 and Radiant for much longer, giving us a brief window where we can actually get a few kills to keep this effect going rather than have it be a sort of one-time use thing. Very quickly onto the seasonal mods, because we really don't have any to take advantage of for this season except for 2, and that really only depends on what weapons you want to use. The first one is going to be Deeper Origins. It greatly improves the effects of Unsated Hunger, which are the new seasonal weapons, Nanotech Tracer Rockets, which are the weapons from Neomuna, Harmonic Resonance, which are the weapons from the Root of Nightmares raid, and Noble Deeds, which are the previous season's seasonal weapons. This works the same way as something like Origin Hones did in the last season. For example, I'm using weapons with Harmonic Resonance, and what this does is it increases the small bonus to handling, reload, and bonus damage to Lucent Hive Guardians whenever I have multiple weapons equipped, and this just makes that basic effect a little little bit better. And the final one is overcharged armory, and basically any of the weapons that I previously mentioned will always be overcharged when that modifier is active. For those who don't know, overcharged is a 25% additional damage modifier, and basically anytime that there's an activity where that modifier is present, your weapons will always be 25% stronger as long as they have this origin trait on them. And just to clear up a misconception around overcharged, if you have a weapon that is currently benefiting from overcharged and is also benefiting from the surge, you only get one bonus. It doesn't give you both 25% bonus stacks, it gives you one single 25% damage bonus. Getting into the armor and the mods for today. The first one is Harmonic Siphon, which just grants us an orb of power periodically after getting solar final blows. And I'm also using Heavy Ammo Finder and a Heavy Ammo Scout, basically meaning any heavy ammo bricks we generate through Finder mods will also benefit our fire team by dropping for them as well. You really don't need to use this. As I mentioned earlier, our heavy weapon literally has infinite ammo built into it. However, this is a nice quality of life mod, as if we don't get the infinite ammo effect from not getting enough kills, this will not only grant us heavy ammo for our heavy weapon, but through Scout, it'll also benefit our fire team by dropping heavy ammo for them as well. However, if you want to mix this up with, say, special finders or special scouts or just different harmonic mods, you can definitely do that too. Onto our gauntlets. The first mod is Harmonic Loader, basically increasing the reload speed of any solar weapon that we have. And for the other two, we're using Font of Vigor and Font of Focus. Both of these will grant us plus 30 stat points into their respective stat, meaning that with Font of Vigor, we get plus 30 Strength, and with Font of Focus, we get plus 30 Discipline for 10 seconds whenever we pick up an Orb of Power. They actually don't require 2 stacks of armor charge, they both share the single one, meaning that if you pick up an Orb of Power, you get both of these effects for 10 seconds, pick up 2 orbs and have 2 stacks of armor charge, you get both of these for 20 seconds. They don't require 2 separate stacks of armor charge to function. And the final thing that I've noted in previous videos is that these will grant you plus 30 stat bonuses to their respective stat, but anything over 100 total stats doesn't work. Same way as if you applied a bunch of armor boosting mods to get over 100 in a specific stat. So if you are already at 100 stats for a specific category, such as discipline or strength, you might want to swap this out based on your armor rolls to get a better effect going for your build. Some other mods, in case you don't want to use Font of Focus or Font of Vigor based on your stat spread, you can always use something like Focusing Strike, which grants you class ability energy when you cause damage with your melee attack, or Impact Induction, for example, when you cause damage with a melee attack, it generates grenade energy. You can also double down on specific loader mods if you wanted to, as well as dexterity mods, which aren't the greatest in PvE, but do provide a nice quality of life boost to your weapons and playstyle. Finally, onto our chest piece and our exotic today is Mantle of Battle Harmony. Now, normally I wouldn't be recommending this thing at any point in the history of Destiny 2, but it actually got a very nice rework in the last season update, and because of that, it's made it a very strong exotic in PvE. In summary, any final blow with this weapon that has a matching damage type to your subclass, so for example, a solar weapon when you're on a solar subclass, it'll grant you additional super energy, and when your super energy is full, you gain a temporary bonus to your weapon damage of the type matching your subclass. So again, when you have full super on a solar subclass, your solar weapons get a 25% damage increase attached to them. Now this bonus weapon damage lasts for 10 seconds after you proc it initially on a first kill, but it is refreshed back up to 10 seconds every time you get a kill after that. Now the one thing to note is that this no longer stacks with surge mods because Bungie didn't want us doing things like re-nerf Path of Burning Steps and 3 surge mods to have a stupid amount of weapon bonus damage, but the trade-off with Mantle of Battle Harmony, because it does require you to have full super to get the damage boosting effect, is it does work with other empowering mods, and the base bonus damage that you get with Mantle of Battle Harmony is actually higher than 3 surge mods, so you're getting a higher bonus than using 3 surge mods without having the expensive mod commitment to it. And whenever you remember that on a solar subclass, since it stacks with stuff like Radiant and we have unlimited Radiant with this build, this brings our base weapon damage whenever we have full super energy to 57% for our solar weapons. And on a solar surge week, it brings us to a total of 96% damage increase just from our mods and just from our armor. It doesn't even include anything else that our weapon or exotic might also buff in and of itself. And we also have increased super regen with Mantle of Battle Harmony in the first place, so it allows us to use our super if needed, get it back very, very quickly, and heavily reward us for holding on to it. I'm personally rocking 2 armor resist, which apply to whatever activity I'm doing and the modifiers in it, for example, sniper and harmonic, or arc and melee, whatever you need. And I'm also rocking a Harmonic Reserve just to increase the reserve ammo for our solar weapons. Again, if you want to rock 3 reserves or 3 resists, you can absolutely do that with this build. Onto our legs for today. The first one we're doing is Elemental Charge. Basically, whenever you collect a Fire Sprite, Ionic Trace, Stasis Shard, Void Breach, or you destroy a Tangle, it has a chance to grant you a stack of armor charge. This is mainly just because we're generating so many Fire Sprites with this build, and picking up a Fire Sprite not only grants us grenade energy back, but with this mod, it can also give us a stack of armor charge. However, if you want to swap this out for another weapon support, go right ahead and do that. For the other two mods, I'm using Harmonic Scavenger and Harmonic Holster. Scavenger allows us to have more ammo given to us when we pick up an ammo brick, and the Holster mod slowly reloads our solar weapons over time as they're stowed. Now again, with Mantle of Battle Harmony, Surge mods don't stack because we get a larger bonus than with all three Surge mods with our exotic, so this allows us to free up these mods for a sort of support role for our weapons rather than directly buffing them. So again, if you want to swap this out for scavengers, for holsters, whatever you prefer. And then finally onto our mark. The first one we're using is Time Dilation. One stack of this will bring any armor decay effect from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, meaning that with all of our font mods, for example, they now have a base duration of 15 seconds instead of 10. I also have Font of Restoration, which is doing the same thing that Font of Vigor and Font of Focus are doing, but it applies to our recovery. With this mod, it grants us plus 30 stats to our recovery stat, and with Ember of Tempering granting us a net 20, this means that we get a bonus 50 stat points to our recovery stat. Again, swap this out based on your current armor spread and what stat points you have in which category. With this in mind, we have an additional 50 stat points to our recovery, 30 stat points to our discipline, and 30 stat points to our strength, granting us an additional 110 stat points with this build. And it's basically present all the time because with one orb of power, we get all these bonuses for 15 seconds. We're constantly generating orbs of power and fire sprites, which can help keep that whole buff system up and active. And then for our final mod, I'm using Healthy Finisher. This will just consume one stack of armor charge and allow us to get healed off of performing a finisher. If you want to swap this off for, say, another stack of Time Dilation, you can absolutely do that. It's really just personal preference for why it's here. Finally, onto the weapons for today. I'm going to start off with the ones that are primarily effective with this build based on the exotic, and then I'll get into the ones that I would kind of substitute in afterwards. The first one I want to mention is Eyes of Tomorrow, and this is my #1 recommendation for this build. Eyes of Tomorrow has been a bit of a background exotic for some time, but it got a really interesting change at the start of Season 21. Basically, along with getting a high damage bonus after killing 4 or more enemies in a single volley, it also grants you 1 ammo refund, meaning that as long as you can get multi-kills with this weapon, it has infinite ammo directly built into it. And when you consider the fact that after getting a 4-kill volley, which is very easy to do with a multi-tracking rocket, it also gets a 50% damage bonus. And this damage bonus does stack with Radiant and Mantle of Battle Harmony, as well as things like Surge modifiers during weekly activities. Putting all of this together means that this weapon can have a 193% damage increase during the right week, which is absolutely stupid when you consider that it also has infinite ammo potentially built right into it. And while this isn't the highest single target damage rocket launcher on the planet, it is something that's going to shred through basically all enemies, even stuff like GM content, and it's 100% the weapon I'm going to be using with this build when GMs come out. Another weapon I would personally recommend is going to be Vex Mythoclast, and again, I know both of these have been raid exclusive exotics. I do have some other great recommendations here in a second, but I want to go over my favorite with this build. But the main reason I'm talking about it here again today is because of how easy it is to use, the awesome benefits it has, and what its catalyst actually grants it. So along with just being a primary weapon and having infinite ammo being a primary weapon, it also has an alternate fire mode that works like a linear fusion rifle, which is really good for dealing single target DPS, especially against something like champions. And with his catalyst, while in full auto mode, Final Blows granted increased damage, which is actually a 20% damage boost, which stacks with all the other damage boosts I mentioned earlier, bonus accuracy and stability, making it just a really easy to use exotic for something like this. Again, if you don't want to use a heavy exotic and commit to using heavy ammo all the time, this is a great alternative as it is a primary weapon and still performs very, very well. And again, this 20% damage bonus can also stack with Mantle of Battle Harmony and Radiant, as well as any other weekly modifier that can be present in an activity. The other exotic I want to recommend is Tiku's Divination, which is actually a very slept-on exotic in general, in my opinion. Basically, whenever you hit fire with this weapon, it'll fire tracking arrows to a target, and whenever you precision fire, any targets previously hit by those tracking arrows then ignite and explode, dealing a ton of damage. And again, this explosion damage is also buffed by Radiant and stuff like Mantle of Battle Harmony and weekly modifiers. With this catalyst, perfectly drawn arrows that detonate those targets increase the damage the arrow actually deals, and anytime you hit a weapon that's previously unaffected by the Sacred Flame effect from the original hit fire arrow, it refreshes causality arrow's duration instead of just stopping it. The other exotics I want to recommend are particularly Parasite, because it already has a high damage boosting effect built into it, meaning that whenever you stack on Radiant, Mantle, and again any weekly modifier, it does even more damage and is absurd with this build. Lament is something that has a lot of healing already built into it and can deal some high DPS on its own. Factor that again, Radiant, Mantle, weekly, and it can do a ton of damage while also having anti-champion capabilities built into it. Gjallarhorn is another recommendation, and it's been one of the best heavy weapons in general, so of course with this build it's going to get even better. For other weapons, really any solar weapon works great. To take advantage of Harmonic Resonance through our seasonal mod, I'm personally using Akasha's Dejection, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm probably not, as well as Rufus's Fury. Not only are these two really good PvE weapons on their own, but with Harmonic Resonance also granting bonus effects just in general activities, they're even better. Especially with our Trace Rifle, it'll have a constant damage bonus going to it at all times basically, and with Harmonic Resonance, it'll especially boost its damage against Hive Guardians, for example, as well as having increased reload and handling. All in all guys, that's the build for today. Like I said, it's one I haven't really seen anyone talk about since the season began, and it's one I wanted to show a spotlight in as we're getting into GMs, because I believe it's going to be one of the greater builds that you can actually do in GM content. And really anything below legend content, I think this is absolute overkill for. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the best healing possible in the entire game, active at all times, as well as having a 97% damage boost up basically all the time with this build. We also have a ton of stat bonuses, as well as fire team support through healing and heavy ammo drops. And honestly, I believe this is a great build for basically all endgame content. On top of this, using Eyes of Tomorrow, we have infinite heavy ammo with an absurd damage boost on top of everything else we've already talked about. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate the continued support on these videos. Again, let me know what you thought of this build down below, as well as any other future recommendations in the comments. I'm going to do a Hunter build next, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Destiny 2 content like this if you like what you saw here today. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good day.